to the Safety Doc Podcast with author, radio host, and nationally recognized safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin. Join us each week as we discuss the best and most bizarre practices in safety preparation and crisis response. Follow Dr. Perrodin on Twitter at SafetyPhD. And remember, the truth will keep you safe.
Hey everybody, this is your good friend Dr. David P. Perrodin from down here in the historic North Star Recording Studio, wishing you well. And I have a special show here today, and hopefully we're doing well on the mic. I think I've got it set up correctly, so let me know how it sounds. So I was talking with both of my neighbors yesterday, and my neighbor to the south they're putting their house up for sale, and they're actually moving a block away to a house that is under construction right now. So they're moving out of our neighborhood, and then my neighbor to the north, I talked with her, and she has some homes in some different areas, and she has been retired a long time. Her husband passed away 2 years ago in March. He was in his 90s, a really great guy. But I kind of get the feeling that that her house will be listed in a not too distant future. Might not be this year, but I don't think her long-term plans are to kind of stay in this area. So we were talking a little bit about kind of the history of the neighborhood, and just I was realizing, hey, like, we are the second longest tenured people in our neighborhood. So we moved here 24 years ago, and in this house right here. And Heather and Robert next to us were here before us. But other than that, like, every house in our neighborhood has been sold or has turned over multiple times. Oh, I got to check something here. So I think, hang on. I have an option here to, okay, it's already set. I was just checking all of the settings. So, okay, looks good. So, yeah, we've been here 24 years. And in that time, every house has had at least one, if not multiple, owners. And so you start to think, like, when we moved in, I remember just how excited we were. It was interesting because when we drove past this house originally, we kind of immediately crossed it off our list of nope. It was the yard was overgrown. There was a fire bush that was as high as the gutters on the front of the house. There was a antenna on the roof, and it had rusted, and the rust streaks were coming down on the shingles, and it just didn't look appealing. And the house at that time had cedar siding, and the house was built in 76, so it definitely looked its age. And but we came back to this house after kind of checking out some others in the town, and then just start to think, well, it's a very nice neighborhood. And the potential of what we could do. The house had excellent bones. I mean, back in 76, I actually talked to the guy who was on the 4-man crew that built this house. I talked to him like a week ago. He lives a couple blocks away. And he's, I don't know, in his like late 70s now. But he mentioned how the inspectors would come by and all of these homes were built, like in my neighborhood, these weren't like spec homes. So, and they all, obviously they all look different. But people would, once they opened up the lots, then they would look at different plans, and then they come up with their own plans, and they would, kind of match the house then to the plan. So there aren't two houses in my neighborhood that are identical. So, we were talking about that, and he said, when the inspector came by, when we were doing these homes, over there, and he also talked about, when your subdivision went in, it was just on a sandy hill, and there was just this little kind of path going up there, so you'd have to get the trucks through the sandy area, and, there wasn't a road there yet, and, but it was, he said the inspector complimented them because when they were building our house and these other homes, and in our area, the way that they lined up the floor joist and the studs were always right on. So like always, the weight would always go directly down, like to the foundation, right? And so just the attention to detail when they were putting it together. And then of course, like this is old growth lumber. So I said, yeah, and I put drywall in the garage after we moved here. I think it was a year after that. Comments should be displaying. I don't know why they, all right, here we go. Dun-da-da. It's Alex Patino. Hey, it's our truck driving friend. I saw the picture you posted, buddy, from you years ago and now. So I think you're looking good, and I like how your hair is. It's really cool. And it's Vanessa. So, yeah, we had I said, when we put the drywall up, like really work at it, because those Douglas fir rafters are very, very strong and old growth. So, but anyway, it's kind of weird with my neighbors to the south. It's a big house. It's like 4,000 square feet, and it has two furnaces, and it has like a fish pond in back, and big pillars in front. It's a pretty impressive place. And so they had a big family, but the house that they're building right now, which again is a block away, they bought a lot, and that's a much smaller house, because obviously the kids, a couple of them are gone, and the rest of them will be out in the next couple of years. They're high school age. But I was just like, well, wow, I remember, when you moved in, I think they had been here 12 years. And I'm like, yeah, and now they're selling all of their furniture. So people have, and she said, we have this big house. So, you have to have couches and tables and stuff in the various rooms. Again, it's like 4,000 square feet. So people have been coming by, because in their new house, they're just going to, bring everything new into that. And, but I thought that was it's kind of neat. You're seeing people stop by, and so here it is. Alex saying that picture was taken 13 years ago. He's serving in the Army. I have been in for 10 years already. Wow. So our good friend Alex does not age. So it was good. Like I actually thought you looked, I think you looked great in both pictures, but I thought like you looked better in the current picture. So, so yeah, I was talking to our neighbor, and the thing is, like, he and his wife both grew up here, so like they're familiar, obviously, with the city. And he was telling me about, like, there was one house down the road, and that was like the first kind of house in the neighborhood, like probably in the early '60s. It was a big brick house, and then eventually, this kind of built out. But this was all just pine trees and sandy soil. So, but it is this weird realization when you see your neighbors like move, and when, like, we have neighbors across the road who have been there a year, if not, I think at least a year, and I've never met them. Now, they're terrific. Like, they are immaculate with their property, just like, and it's a younger couple, but they kind of keep to themselves. And like, it seems every time I go over, not like they're trying to avoid me, but they're kind of like just back in their house. So sometime I have to get over there and say hi. But I'm kind of like, yeah, like when we moved here, like we were young, and then I remember, we walked through the front door and there were these spindles. I mean, because the house was pretty much as it was in 1976, like the orange and yellow and green linoleum floor in the kitchen, and this, the light fixtures and just the bathrooms, everything was original. So we had done, major updating over the years. And then obviously when we did the outside and updated, then the house looks like it was built, probably around the year 2000 now. So but anyway, kind of getting back to like sitting out in my chair in summer, just kind of chilling out in my camp chair in the driveway, and you see like different people walking through the neighborhood that you don't know, and try to engage some of them in conversation and stuff. But you start to realize, like, when they see you, they're like, hey, that's that's one of the old timers in the neighborhood, right? Like, they've been here a long time. Yeah, the guy's been here long here. He's, he knows. And it is this feeling now, especially like hitting retirement, because I don't know how to describe it, but there definitely is this this awareness of I wouldn't say necessarily getting older, but I'm like, wow, we don't really know the people in the neighborhood. In a block away, those were huge, or those are huge homes. Like the owner of the ski hill, right, and some other kind of moguls of our town, and they built new homes in the last 2 years. So those properties went up for sale, and but they had been there. So like we had this, like I said, when trick or treating happens, it's Halloween. We get over 1,000 trick or treaters. They shut this whole area down because people come here, they bring their kids in here, but I don't know these people. I don't know who's been moving in. I really, now with, and you're kind of nervous then with our neighbors who are moving to the south, because that property, we have steel siding that faces that house. You're hoping, you get, you're not having like young kids out there throwing stuff and it's hitting the side of your house, and there's a fence there, but you just never know. Like, one of the cool things with them and my neighbor Tim, actually, again, who's moving, there's this piece of plot of grass between our two properties, and it's maybe like 12 foot wide. But the property line runs like 9 feet on my side and 3 foot on his. So whenever you mowed it, like, it would just look off. So I immediately said, if you don't mind, I'll just mow this. Like, I'll just take care of this so it always looks consistent, because otherwise it just kind of looks weird. And he was like, yeah, that's fine. So when I was talking to him yesterday, I said, hey, like, whoever buys a house, if you can just throw in a word that we kind of had this arrangement where I was mowing, and I mean, I know they don't have to follow it and they can do their own thing, but I just kind of like that. It just looked crisp and finished then. But the people that lived there previous, though, they were very protective of that like 3 foot area. And if I mowed anywhere onto that, they let me know about it. And I was like, well, I don't know. So let's see here. Oh, all right. I think this is our good friend Homeschool. First aid class, first aid kit. Know where doctor, nurse, medic live in your neighborhood. Do not get hurt in the first place. It's interesting you say that, because my friend Steve, who lives a block away, was the nurse at the prison for, I think, almost 40 years. And Steve is the neighbor that I go to I mean, he builds his own bikes and he bikes to like Texas and just really handy. So when I had a garden hose, a flex hose, and I used a brass nozzle, and it's like aluminum and brass. You're not supposed to do that because galvanic reaction, and I couldn't separate them, so I couldn't get it apart. So I took it over there, and Steve's like, "Yeah, don't worry about it." And he had different vices and stuff downstairs, and was able to get it separated. And then I bought a stainless steel nozzle after that. But yeah, Steve would be my go-to if I ever had anything, or like if I wasn't here. I've got his phone number, and he has mine and stuff. So like if there was, I mean, I'm usually here, right? But if we were on vacation or something, and in that case, someone is usually at the house. But Steve would be the person who, if there was a storm that came through or something, that I would expect to give me a call. We also live literally 2 minutes from the hospital, which has a helipad, and the hospital was built 15 years ago, so it's new, and then they've added like additional facilities to it. So to get to, and the city provides ambulance service. They have 3. But for me, like if I had to go to the hospital or emergency, somebody could get me there in literally 2 minutes, or less. So that's kind of a plus of being where we're at. So yeah, and then like I said, there's the helo pad with the chopper always out there. So hopefully you wouldn't need that, but it is nice to have that close by. When I grew up, I lived in a rural community of like 1,500 people, and if you needed medical care, we had a doctor in town, like during the week, during weekday hours, Dr. Ware, who, could kind of do routine stuff for you. But if you needed urgent medical care, the town didn't have an ambulance I grew up in. The neighboring town provided coverage. So like if you called, back then there wasn't 911, you have to dial whatever number and they would dispatch. I mean, it would take, 20, 30 minutes for an ambulance to get to you. And then it would have to do whatever treatment and then take you to the neighboring city, which was 30,000, which had a regular hospital. So by the time like you put the call in to the time you got to the hospital, could easily be like 40 to 50 minutes. So that is a plus, I think, of where I'm at right now. I hadn't even thought about that. So Andrew's saying Uber is the new ambulance for the poors. I had a friend who worked on an ambulance crew. Yeah, this was like 30 years ago. And he was saying that, you get the frequent flyers, right? If this is what you do, you're an EMT, you get used to a certain group of people who just are calling for an ambulance almost weekly. So, hey, Z. Hey, buddy. So, local ambulance workers finish their cheeseburger fries, shake cigar before they drive over to emergency call. So, yeah, so our fire department and our ambulance are full-time staffed. So that is also kind of a plus of being in a community this size. So that is, it's good. So, but yeah, so I hadn't thought about, how long we've been here and how much the neighborhood has turned over until probably yesterday. And after yesterday, it sunk in a little bit because I'm like, whoa. And then you're like, as I'm looking at things, I'm like, okay, we've been here 24 years. Like 24 years from now, like I would be 78. So I don't even know if I'll be around. But I'm like, holy smokes. So I don't know if any of you have had kind of that experience where, you grew up, and then when I had that when I was a kid, like we grew up in a neighborhood of World War II veterans and their widows, like all around us. And once I got to like high school age, like, you know, a majority of them had died. And then the homes were, starting to turn over. But it was really pretty stable, like when I was a kid until like, again, maybe high school. Like there wasn't any substantial turnover in the neighborhood, maybe an occasional house, but yeah, it is a strange, it's an unusual feeling to be like, 24 years. And again, to be the second longest. And I think we'll be the oldest people here as far as like the time within a short duration. I don't think our other neighbor has long-term plans to stay here anymore. So, but yeah, and there are some homes, which have been bought and sold, 3 or 4 times. When we first moved here, there's a home on the corner and that was just a wooded lot. So, and now, it looks like that's been here, kind of forever. And I think that was probably developed like 2-3 years after we moved here. There was a sign when we first moved in. The city had put up a sign and it's like, hey, don't dump your leaves and like, lawn debris and stuff like this, over at this lot. Big sign. So, yeah. Hey, it's Ron Wayne. The guy. Ron Wayne. He is the Rock of Kentucky. Keeping everything together. Keeping the legacy together. Good friend Ron Wayne. It's Misty, Mrs. Wayne. Oh my goodness. I was thinking about you guys. I was taking a walk in the new subdivision just because now it really works out well because the city has connected it so I can get to it pretty easy. Like they put a road through. Otherwise I'd like climb over this hill and, it gets to be a little adventurous for Doc to go out and to do those things. But yeah, and the city decided to put a blacktop walkway, blacktop sidewalk, I guess, instead of like concrete. And you have to like go over this hill to get to this new subdivision, and they put maybe like a 4-foot buffer between that and the road. And immediately you could just tell like this would all wash out. Like there's no way this will stay. And of course, like the first couple of rains we had, everything's gone. Like all the grass seed, all of that stuff is like, the straw, like there's just a gully there. So I'm like, well, you should have just paved the whole thing. I suppose they're trying to save $1. But anyway, it is really nice to be able to walk in this area because I don't have to cross like any busy roads, and it's pretty quiet yet in this subdivision as they're putting homes up and I can do a nice loop right past the hospital. I literally walk, 30 feet from the helicopter, the med-flight helicopter, sidewalk there. And then there's a trail the city has that loops back and I can connect up to my house. And there's like there's a bench, and that was like the hospital. And back in that area, there's still a field that the hospital has. And there used to be these professional kite flyers, these kites that would be like 30 foot by 40 foot, and they'd have to be anchored down and they'd get them up. And they would do that every spring. And people go up there, and then the kids, like our daughters, when they were young, they get to make their own kites. Or we bought a nice kite for our daughter, and she would go up there and fly it. And I'm glad that we did that. I have some pictures and like little videos that I took. That's been years now, but so every time I walk in that area, I just kind of pause because like the field is still there, but they haven't done the kite thing for, 10 years or so. But yeah, that is. So there's also then the high school is to my right as I'm walking, and they're adding a pool and a gym to the high school right now. So that's probably about 30% done. So I always walk up to the chain link fence around the the work site to kind of see how it's progressing. So I saw the blueprint on the district website because I couldn't kind of figure out where things were aligned when I was first like looking at this. I'm like, okay, like where is the, and then finally, once the one wall went up and I could match the number of windows to the blueprint, then I'm like, oh, okay, this is how it's all coming together. But that's ahead of schedule. It's supposed to be open, I think, by Christmas, which will be nice because the high school has one gym. I mean, it's a full-size gym, but they're adding a second gym, which will have bleachers on one side, which is kind of more a practice gym where you could have JV games there, and then a 8-lane swimming pool. Our community had a pool at an elementary school in town, but it was built like in the early 60s, and it was added on to this like older building from the 20s. And then eventually it started to fail and it didn't make sense to repair it. So they've been without a pool for maybe like 4 years. So when our daughters were young and learning to swim, they went to the pool. And the hospital, when they did their fitness center, they have a pool there, but it's not really like, it's just a couple lanes and stuff like that. So this will be a community pool, and it was needed. So, and it's an asset for us because it makes our home more valuable because you could literally walk to the aquatic center now, from our house. So, let's go over to the chat here. Z's saying, I have a hidden cemetery in my neighborhood boxed in by houses, one hidden entrance. Really? Wow. That is fascinating. It reminds me, Z, so when I would go out biking, and I would pass a number of old cemeteries and really kind of abandoned cemeteries where, there wasn't a structure, a church anymore, and these little rural cemeteries. It's actually where I would usually stop and have a stretch or have my lunch or whatever at one of these. Actually, one of them is is written about extensively as one of the most haunted cemeteries in the state. So I don't know about that. It seems to be the cemetery where people drop their couches that they don't want anymore. But it is kind of neat. But wow, I think I was telling everyone before when. In my community, second oldest community in the state of Wisconsin, this was Winnebago Indians. So we live in the Indian Hills subdivision. The Indian Agency House was built in 1824. I think 1820, it might have been 1822. The Fort Winnebago was built in 1824. It was occupied until 1848, just about a mile away. There's only one building left from that one from 1824. But anyway, there were a lot of burials throughout the city in that time, and they weren't marked. So the city just kind of had a protocol, right? Like, so if you're building and you find bones or artifacts, you're supposed to let the city know. That's still like to this day. It was pretty common apparently in the 60s when they were putting out some of these subdivisions. And when they added on, so my daughter does the community theater, the youth community theater, and that is in a church which was built on a corner in downtown, and I think the church was built like 1840, and then now it's been renovated several times. It's actually very nice, this community theater, but when they renovated it like 2 years ago, they found like 6 bodies, like as burials, because that corner was the original Catholic cemetery. So they kind of went into the expansion thinking, well, maybe they'll find it, and they did. So, but yeah, it's kind of interesting. Now every time I walk by these new houses going up and they dig out the basements, it's all sand. So it's pretty easy to do that here. I mean, people put in basements, because again, you're not having to deal with rock or anything like that. But I'm always kind of checking through that stuff to see if there's any pottery, any arrowheads, anything like that. But yeah. So Ron Wayne, professional kite flyers. Yeah, it was cool. I think the hospital sponsored it, and these folks would come in with, I'm assuming these kites were like thousands of dollars, and they would have these big metal stakes to anchor them down. I think if you can imagine like a big top circus and you have a tent and you're staking that down, it was that. So it's just a field, right? So you're able to put the stuff down. I remember one time one got away and it flew. And at that time there weren't homes in that area that it went to, and it just took off. I mean, it's probably like a $2,000 kite. It was just gone. But, oh man, that was just really cool to go up there. And then, they had people who would sit down with the kids and they would make little kites and the kids would fly them. Or if you brought your own kite, like they give you a space and you would fly it. And so I'm glad our daughters were able to do that. I remember that. And then also going back up there with my youngest daughter. I mean, now she's in high school, but I mean, this was back when she was still in elementary school on a windy spring day before like everything would kind of green up in that area. And the brush would kind of, take over again. I'd be like, hey, let's go up there. And so that was fun. I'm glad I did that. Professional water slide tester. Guys, I live 15 miles from Wisconsin Dells, which is the water slide capital of the world. So you can look that up. Wisconsin Dells. I think $2 billion in water slides. So pretty amazing. Yeah. So as a kid, like that was always a destination. But from my house, it was like a hour and 45-minute drive, like where I grew up, easily to get to Wisconsin Dells. So, but like, it's interesting now because there's all these different attractions there, different, there's like a robotics world and stuff like that. And they have, part of the original space module, the Soyuz or whatever, the Russian module is there. But, that, for me, I can bike there. There's like back roads and I can come up right behind one of the resorts and stuff like that. It's so close, but we don't go there anymore. When the kids were young, you could get passes. The Park and Recs department in our city would have them, so you could pay like 50% off. And it was a day trip, so you didn't have to really pack a lunch. You didn't have to do lodging and any of that stuff. So it was nice to be a local, but then also not have to deal with the traffic and all the other stuff, because I was like, oh my God, I don't know how I would handle it if I lived here. But that's crazy. So, wow. Z saying, I found it on Google Maps. I zoomed in and like, whoa. Yeah, in my hometown, there's a monastery, which was maybe like a quarter mile from my house, that was built like in 1919 or something. And where my parents live, it's like the same distance away. It's just a different angle to get there. And they have a cemetery for the monks in the back. So, and they had the Stations of the Cross, and they had stone steps that would go down to the river. It was really cool as a kid to like just kind of explore back there. And now it's a retreat center. And actually then right next to it is like the high school, and then this large like expanding cheese factory. So it's kind of like lost the, just the ambiance. But so old cemeteries are really interesting. Yeah. So Ron, here's an interesting story. I used interesting twice. So, but when I had a guest on my podcast, a Safety Doc podcast, right? And Ilita Kenny, who was a folklorist, really nice person, Ilita Kenny, and so your old cemeteries, and she wrote a book, and anyway, something in that folklore in Iowa kind of theme, and I don't exactly remember. It's been a long time, but I remember telling her that somehow we got talking about like old cemeteries or like our community, obviously second oldest in the state. So there are headstones. It's not like out east, but I mean, we have headstones from the military cemetery, which is different. It's right outside of town, but I mean, so you have Revolutionary War soldiers, you guys that died like in 1825, who were born in 1750 or whatever. So, so there's some really interesting things. But I told her, I said, I usually bike through. There's 2 large cemeteries on the edge of town that when I come back biking, I would just go through one or the other to kind of just decompress, because otherwise you're biking at a pretty steady pace, and then to come in and just slow down. And she's like, whoa, like, don't do that. And I was like, whoa, why? And she said, when you're worn down, like kind of physically and stuff like that, you become more susceptible to spirits who are looking to latch on to somebody. And I said, whoa. There were times that it kind of felt, and it was all daylight and stuff like that. It just kind of, it felt a little weird, but not anything where I was like spooked or be like, I don't know. But after she said that, I was like, okay, I'm done. Like the rural cemeteries, I still kind of stop. But like going through the larger ones in the city, that was the end of it. After she said that, I was like, oh, sounds good to me. It's kind of a weird thing, because I don't know if I could share, and please share like what your thoughts are. But I, like when I eventually pass on, I don't have any plans for like a headstone or anything like that. Just be cremation and whatever is done. But with the ashes, which really aren't ashes, right? Just like a ground-up bone. But I look at these cemeteries, and it's kind of interesting. I like the history aspect of it, and some of these YouTube channels where people go in and clean headstones and stuff like that. But I'm just like, man, I just don't see the practical point of being underground. It's kind of like, you see these like stories of, they found like these Roman ruins, and there was a sarcophagus, and so they opened it up, and I'm like, well, like, is that just what everybody's going to do? Like 2,000 years anyway? They're just, I don't know. So I don't really. My parents had a burial plot, and I think they had it like for me, and they were asking me like a year ago, what are your intentions? Like, do you want this? And I was like, well, no, because I'm not going to be buried. And so they like had a relative who was interested in it. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. So, rock claws is a serious thing. You can spend so much time jackhammering out rock if you have to go deep. So, yeah, maybe like on a basement or something. That's where I'd love to have a metal detector. Yeah, no kidding. When I was growing up, we also had a farm outside of town for ginseng. And my brother would always find arrowheads when we would do rock picking on the fields. I never found any, and he would like find a lot. And then I think he found it was a stone carved like a bird. So there are a lot of Indian artifacts right along the river, Rib River. So, but let me go. I love the chat here. Hey, it's super pilotish. That guy's always posting crazy stuff on Twitter. What is up with that guy? So, oh my goodness. So, trying to pick up. I mean, after he left, after the super pilotish show closed, this northern part of the country that kind of merges with Canada just took a big hit. Ron Wayne was carrying the heavy load down there in Kentucky, keeping things going. But up here, we lost super pilotish. It's like, whoa. It's like the lights went out. It's our good friend. It's Andrew. Cemeteries are supposed to remind us there's more to life than working a job. Yeah, and the thing is, like, I would see these cemeteries, and the ones, so like you see the old gravestones, they're toppled over, and they're thin and everything is just like weathered off of them, and land shifts. Not that they've been vandalized, it's just like over time, it's just entropy, right? And then like the new thing, which you probably have seen on headstones, is where they have like the person's picture on it, and somehow like shellac over it and stuff. So and there was a cemetery when I was biking, and it was right next to a railroad, and there was a headstone facing out to the road. So like if you'd stop, you could see this picture. And it was a young lady, like early 20s, 20, 21 maybe. And I looked up the name and the obituary, because she passed like 20 years ago. But there was this picture. It was just, I was just kind of thinking like, boy, I can't imagine like a cemetery and there's like a headstone, there's a picture of Doc there. So like, I don't know. It just, it's hard. It's just a hard thing. I'm like, I don't know. So calcium. Oh my goodness. That's super. Look at where this guy is. It's creepy. I don't know. Holy smokes. That Graham Wilson, but he's a good guy. So it is fun, Graham. I'll tell you on Twitter, it is fun to kind of like be able to use the parrot AI and then have the different voices, the different people kind of go back and forth. That's a glimpse into my fantasy football league. I've been with the same guys in that league for like 30 years. A lot of them went to high school and stuff like that, and so like they all get into it. So that's kind of nonstop. And when this season ended, my friend Andy, who lives in Florida, sent me an email, and he's like, man, like I was just, it was so funny, all of the stuff that we were sending back and forth, that like when the season ended, it was kind of like a withdrawal of like, whoa, can't wait till the next year. So it was just fun. I actually did, when I played Andy, I did a 1-minute NFL like intro, and I did it on Flex Clips. So it was like free. There's just a little logo up in, and it was hilarious. So yeah, it's Ron. And Ron, I am seriously thinking about visiting you and Mrs. Wayne. Not right now, but if that offer stands, maybe in a year or two, to drive down, occupy a portion of your couch for a couple days. So I think that would be really cool. And like where you live, like Kentucky, Ray, I think I shouldn't say I've been to Kentucky, but like just kind of passing through. It would be interesting to kind of spend a couple days of like the history, I guess, of Kentucky, if that makes any sense. I don't know. You're like, Doc, I have no idea. So, Mrs. Wayne saying they have a thing now. You can put a barcode on a grave and anybody can scan it and see pictures. Interesting. See, that would be something I think is cool now, but it's like, will that technology exist in 20 years? Right. So when the Milwaukee Bucks, I'm in Wisconsin, in 2021, won their championship, on their championship rings, they had a barcode, or not a QR code. They had a QR code, and then I was thinking, yeah, that's kind of cool now, but like I just don't know if that's going to be around, right? But yeah, I don't. It's one of those things. Like I don't really struggle with thinking about a legacy because I've written a few books. There's the YouTube videos out there. I mean, I hate to say it, and I've thought about this a few times. Like my grandparents, I haven't visited their graves in 20 years or longer. I could, like my grandparents on my mom's side, I could, or her parents, I could find them fairly easy. But like on my dad's side, I don't even know what cemetery they're in. Like it was a larger city, and I had to kind of figure that out. And then, so yeah, I don't know. Wow. So, look at this here. So it is Ron Wayne, I'll dress like Abraham Lincoln, a top hat, full fake beard. Put that on a headset. You should. So in this old cemetery, as I'm biking, like this very rural cemetery, there are a few plots, a few new graves, like in the last 10 years. In one, there's a race car, like, probably like a 1960s, like Mustang or like a GTO. And then there's a drum set. And there's some phrase of like, let the good times roll or something. It's just kind of this like lighthearted comedy thing. And I see some of those things now. But yeah, that'd be something. So yeah, no, I have been thinking, as I said in a couple of previous shows, that now, leaving the university and just like getting older and kind of just getting through that weird, like 15 months of like unrelenting medical stuff, that I'm like, whoa, and my, daughters in college, my other daughters in high school, to take some time and visit. Whether like Kentucky, I would drive, but like whether I'd fly out, like my friend Aaron Clary, every time we talk or text or whatever, he's like, hey, fly out to South Dakota and Rapid City, and I'll pick you up. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm like, actually, I kind of like to drive that because I like that route in like Mitchell, South Dakota, and which is on the way. But I'm like, yeah, I need to do that. I need to do that. So Ron is saying, just let me know when. Make sure you get some good old fashions. Oh my goodness! Wow. All right. So, sound is good on my phone. Never did phone YouTube stuff before. Live chat, pretty cool. That's good. So yeah, I had the big show, I don't know, about a week ago to announce after 23 years and 100 course sections, I was leaving from the university, and the mic, I don't know if it's the mic. I'm not going to blame the mic necessarily, but I played it back and I was like, oh my God, that audio was horrible. And so I have like the actual settings up on the right hand screen, and I'm doing like just audio now through the headset. And it was weird because I did all these videos for the class I'm teaching, and then I'd upload them into Moodle, and everything sounded good. I was just doing like live takes through StreamYard. But the thing with StreamYard is, and I love StreamYard, it runs through Google Chrome. So if your bandwidth is compromised at all, and this is directly through Spectrum cable into the wall right there, out the house, but you can have issues. So I think that it was compressing. And I did it. I had a lot of meetings that day, and I didn't like reboot the computer, even though I have like 128 gig of RAM on here. And so anyway, it was weird. So I couldn't believe it when I played it back. Like, you got to be kidding me. But yeah, the last show was good. And now this one seems good. I have the mic in a better position too, and I changed the settings. So this was not a cheap mic. I'm like, come on, don't let me down, short mic. So sound is good on my phone. Whoa, I just got a text from Graham. He's like, it's good, but he goes, I'm in prison. Work release back today. So, all right. I have it held up close to the bars. It's the way to do it. Just finished editing my video for the day. That was quick. Nice. Very nice. So yeah, my neighbor who's moving, he bought like a high end, like a $30,000 lawnmower with all the attachments and stuff like that last year, and had out his shed. It just was amazing. And then he had his other one, which was really nice. But he's like, hey, do you want this other mower? Like, I'll just give it to you. Riding mower. I'm like, yeah, I don't have room for it. Like I don't have room in my garage. It's just a two-stall garage, which is fine for the two vehicles, but I don't have any room in that. I don't have a shed out back. And just like we go up against city parkland, trees and stuff. So like, and we have windows facing, so the shed would just be very disruptive to put in the backyard. So I was like, yeah. But yeah, he paid over 30 grand for it. So they're pretty well off. I think it's like $1 million house next to me. So, yeah, that was something. When it was delivered, like it was a whole day training. Like there were a couple, people from this place, and they were showing like all the attachments that went with it. And the thing is that it's kind of ironic is where they're moving to. It's not a very big lot, and it's all flat. And there are some original pine trees left on one corner, but like he's not going to have any leaves with this mower. So I jokingly said to him, but I was kind of serious about it yesterday. I'm like, dude, in October, like come up and sweep through my backyard, because I had a hell of a lot of leaves from an oak, and then actually his trees would drop, his maple, and he did that. Like he would swipe through, which saved me a ton of time. And I'm like, no, seriously, like if you just, he's like, yeah, no, I will. I'll come up here, Dave, and come through and so don't tell anybody. But then I have like a little trail that goes back into the park where all the leaves get dumped. So, and all my ashes from my fireplace. So people are like, oh, these ones look like a crematorium back here. But when it grows up, like in spring, can't tell anyway. So, yeah. So comedic headstones. So can make you smile. Yeah, I like that. When I was in college, so there was a cemetery along the Wisconsin River. There were trails that went past it, and at night, like I would get out and I would walk like these trails and stuff. Like there were other people do the same thing. It was nice, but I remember in that cemetery, it was the first time I'd ever seen instead of a grave, it was a granite bench. Engraved with whatever's. So when you would go, right, to think of this person, you could sit down and reflect. I just thought that was kind of cool. Like I was like, yeah, bench seems to kind of make sense. But I do like the history of cemeteries. So when I was in Boston, that was amazing to go through. And again, just out of town, we have the Fort Cemetery from 1824 to 48 or 45. So, yeah, your sound's a lot better. Thanks. Yeah, I was like, damn it, Mike. So Aaron has a new version of this, and I kind of like the look of that. But I'm not buying a new mic unless like there was something wrong with this thing. So, but I was like, come on. And I didn't do like the audio checks. So anyway, yeah, 30K that come with its own driver. It's really neat. It is really something. So yeah, as I said, I mean, it's a house, and it has pillars, and it has 2 furnaces, and it is in back. There's this pond, this professionally made pond, this koi pond, and then water. There's a waterfall, so I can see it from my back. We have we butt up properties, so. But there was a guy who did some work on our house, and he'd done some work on that house, and he said like the utilities are crazy because you're heating like 4,000 square feet with 2 furnaces, and so it's a really nice house. I mean, it looks impressive. So look at this. Graham Wilson's like, I got to fly, literally. Get my plane. I got to get out of here. So it's good to see Graham. Maybe we should do like a show or something sometime. So that'd be good. But it is our good friend Graham Wilson, super pilot. He's our Canadian hero. So the HMS Graham Wilson, it's a warship. It has a lot of Cat 3 cable exposed on the outside. So kind of rushed. It's effective, but questionable on the seaworthiness. So Z got his lawnmower $80, Facebook. So I still have my push mower, and hey, I got to do this. Hang on, this is for Graham. Man, I forgot I had that going. Look at this. All the stuff here they added StreamYard, and then you forget about it. That was the exit sound for Graham. Yeah, I have the original snowblower I bought. So there's a place in town, the small engines place where I bought everything, and they're still like in business. And and then my leaf blower, and now I'm on my second weed eater. My first one was a 4-stroke Briggs and Stratton, which was a monster. Like, it is big, like a harness that you'd wear, because the thing would be like 60, 70 pounds, like in a 4-stroke. And it was a flawed design from the start, because anytime you'd pivot, like the sump wouldn't get to the piston, right? So, so like this thing's always smoking or seizing up, and then you have to like get it going again. And that finally bit the dust like 2 years ago, and I replaced it with an Echo 2-stroke, which I really like. At first, I kind of hated it because it didn't have the power like this 4-stroke Briggs and Stratton. You could do anything with that, but it was just just hard to maneuver, and so I like my Echo. Like, now that I've kind of like I got used to it, just how lightweight it is, and I can zip it around. So that's been really good. But yeah, I have my lawnmower. I think I'm on like my third lawnmower, but this one I had, I don't know, for like maybe 15 years. And it's still my original snowblower that I bought in 2008. Whereas so this weekend we could get a foot of snow. It's kind of iffy. It's pretty warm out, so I don't know if that's going to happen, although like Monday it'd be like 17. So yesterday was 73. Today is 50 and very windy, and then there's severe weather coming through, but it's like south of us. So north of us is snowing. So we're just in this path where it's just windy. There's nothing happening. But there's like a large hail risk, like about 40 miles south of us. So, but again, like I checked the radar, like we're like in this path where nothing's happening. So I don't know where I was going with that, but so dun 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 dun. But here's also for our good friend Graham Wilson. All right. And then this is the last one, and Graham was wiring up his Cat 3 cable, and something didn't go right. Whoa. Pieces of his house all over, but he was all right. So yeah. So it is funny because, yeah, my neighbor is saying, like, if there's anything you want, because we're not going to be moving everything down to the new house, which is also smaller. I'm like, yeah. And that's also, it's a weird thing too, because, I think I might have talked about this before, but like my wife and I look at different furniture that we have. Like, we had a China hutch made. There's an Amish community about 20 miles from us. So when we first moved here, within a couple of years, we had them build furniture. And they built stuff that was amazing for, like, I was sketched out in the dimensions, and like, you get a postcard, hey, it's ready. And go them out and get it like 6 months later. And so we have this kitchen table, and then my daughter who's in college, like her bedroom set, we had them build. So this stuff is amazing in the quality, but then it's like the China hutch, I can't imagine either of them taking it in the kitchen table. So we're like, some of the stuff you should take, especially like the coffee table, the custom end tables that we had are really nice, but it's kind of like a weird thing too, because like with my parents' house, for example, they have a large house, and I was talking to my brother, and I'm like, I don't know, I can't really imagine anything furniture wise that I would take. I mean, because our house has furniture, plus like we're kind of in the stage now where we would probably start to downsize the house a little bit. We have a front room, which is nice. We kind of underutilize that, and I would like to put a couch out there and like a reading area. That's something too. So I started to do, let me grab this. Back. All right. Whew. Okay. So I was going, with retiring from the university. I have books over here. I have books in the back, books over there under the guitar. But like most of them are education books. So I'm like, yeah, I probably will never use these again. And then Ron Wayne's like, what about Mike Wazowski? I'm like, Ron, I don't know. So I don't think Mike's going to read these books either. Although he's a really good student at Monsters, Inc. But I was going through my books, and I'm like, yeah, one summer, after I'm done with the last class, I'm going to, you can donate them to the library, and then they have a sale. Probably put 25 cents on it. It was funny. I was at a library book sale. I was at the sale like 5 years ago. There was a book on education statistics and whatever, and I was like, man, this is kind of a neat book. So like I bought it, and I had it home, and I was going through it, and there was a note card, and I was like, oh God, like that's my handwriting. Like I donated this book like 10 years ago. I'm like, I should have kept it, but then whatever. But so I'm going to downsize because I haven't read these, and I have really no reason to keep them. But here's a book, Verbal Judo by Ron Wayne. Holy smokes. Who is this by? Look, that's the publisher. Jeez. So I can at least give credit. How the hell do you publish a book? Oh, here we go. And not put your name. George J. Thompson and Jerry B. Jenkins. George has a PhD. Jerry apparently has no affiliation next to his name. So I wonder how that went down. But so I've been reading through this. I just realized a few days ago, like I enjoyed reading. Like 10 years ago, I would go to the library like on a Friday, and I kind of had a routine and grab my coffee, and I would work my way through different books. And somehow I just got away from that. So I was like, well, this is cool. And so this one I never read. I had a long time, but these are stories from, well, it seems to be written from the one person's point of view here, George, who's a police officer, and he talked about different calls where he would show up, and then like the de-escalation techniques that they would use. Now this stuff again his book was published 2004, so I'm not sure some of the stuff like he talked about. One time it was a domestic dispute, and he came in and sat down on the couch and grabbed like a newspaper that was there, and I don't even know if that was kind of real. It seemed like it was a little bit of a trope, but I like how it's written. Like this is written in a way that I would write, so I enjoy reading it. Verbal Judo, but and there are a few other books that I found. I think one is Atomic Habits. I don't have it, but I'm like, you could buy it for like $7 off of eBay. But I'm like, yeah, I need to get back into reading. So I've been going through that book and enjoying it. So that's something too. I like audiobooks like when I'm driving, but I don't like audiobooks if I'm just sitting at home. So I have just a thumb drive of audiobooks in my car, like if I'm doing any distance stuff. But so let's check over to the chat and see what's happening. So Z's got a video up. It's Ron Wayne, Barney Fife, better at judo. Oh my goodness, yeah. The Andy Griffith show is on, I don't know, whatever channel here, but so we watch it almost every day. Cool. Very cool. So yeah, getting back, one thing I want to do is to read at a regular pace, like to take a day of the week now that I'm out in the university and be like, just because again, I really enjoyed it and I just got away from it. So Mrs. Wayne is saying she's a huge book reader. Mystery novels, yeah. I like kind of the spooky, like Civil War stuff or like haunted places. I have a number of those books, or just kind of like, strange facts and things like that. So I specifically wanted to get into, I didn't really have like a lot of books where I'm like, I kind of want to, but Verbal Judo is like, yeah. Once I start to read it, I'm like, yeah, this is good. So, and every once in a while I will reread my own books because sometimes I forget that I had certain things in them, or people will reach out and they'll ask questions and I'm like, yeah, what page is that? Like, what was that? So, you kind of get a little distance from what you put in. And I still look at, I had somebody contact me this week, a professor at a different university that I know. So Ron is saying a Misty Mrs. Wayne would read a telephone book if they still had them. Oh my goodness, I remember the telephone books. I remember, as a kid, when they would drop them off in your doorstep, when they would come through and they'd update. Oh my goodness. So yeah, I lost my train of thought. So, but anyway, books. Oh, reading my own. So one of my friends, who's a professor at a different university, was saying, School of Air is still a really good book. He was asking me, are you considering updating? At one time I was considering a second edition, with my editor. My publisher got bought out by Bloomsbury, who published Harry Potter. So now my second book appears as a Bloomsbury work, but the original appears as Roman and Littlefield. So it's kind of interesting from that, because it was published by the same publisher, published Harry Potter. So, oh my goodness, the Sears wish books. Yeah, that would come at Christmas. I would spend hours just paging through, especially get to the stereo equipment or the sporting goods stuff. That was really cool. And our local hardware place, which isn't a chain, they published a spring book kind of like that, which I thought was a little bit odd because, you could just find the stuff online, but it did kind of. I took the time to go through everything. I was like, oh yeah, a sledgehammer, yeah, a thatching rake. Okay, I got it. So it was that thick. So, but yeah, wow. So yeah. It's cool. It's cool stuff. So, yeah. So I do want to get back. So my friend, was asking, are you going to do an update? And I said, yeah, I don't know. I talked to the publisher, or I talked to the editor, and they're kind of, things have just changed. So, oh my goodness, is Misty Mrs. Wayne, is she done for the night? Oh my goodness. All right. Well, If she is, have a good night, Misty Mrs. Wayne. You and Ron, awesome. So get in there and leave some extra reviews for School of Airs. I think it's funny because I think both books, School of Airs has been at 62 reviews for maybe 2 years, and same with Velocity of Information, 33. I don't think there's been one review written in the last 2 years for either book. So I'm just I don't know. So, it's just kind of funny, how the reviews just stopped. Although, the sales still continue, because I still get royalty checks and a letter every July from my publisher saying here's how many copies sold. But and the audiobook stuff, that's a real weird. Oh, you're answering Ron's question. There you go. So, Ron's what's the initials for Prime Minister? So, PM, it's Prime Minister. So, but yeah, I was it's hard to get any traction with nonfiction these days because so much can be done in ChatGPT. And then also, I remember when I published my books, I had a range of 230 pages, 2 to 230. And that was down because 10 years ago, it would be 230 to 250. But the publisher's saying people just don't want to read long books anymore. And people, unless you're into kind of what Misty Mrs. Wayne, a novel or something like that, if it's nonfiction, people don't want that. So, so I don't even. The thing is, when you publish through a publisher through a contract, you don't make a lot of money unless there's a lot of sales. So eventually, you kind of hit the bend, and then you have so many sales under your belt, so you get a higher royalty rate. And I've kind of hit that, but it's not it's not that's a lot of money, but it just, you kind of get to that point where every summer you get a check to basically pay for a small vacation. But to put all the time in now, and I don't really have a purpose. See, that's the other thing is I'm not teaching at the university anymore, where the book was a good tie-in and also enabled me to do some things at the university by publishing scholarly work. But so yeah, anyway, my friend who's a PhD and a professor at a different university was asking me what my plans were. I said, I'm done with all of that. I really appreciate what I did, but like, I'm not firing up the printing press for anything else. So Andrew was born too late to order a house from the Sears catalog. Yeah. What was that? Come in a rail car and 125 pounds of nails. And so, yeah, kind of neat how that stuff was available back then. Yeah. So, but, what else is going on here? So I'm doing some contracting right now. And it's an interesting thing because I always say like I'm done. Like every year I'm basically say I'm done with that. And because it does take a lot of time and you're kind of coming into situations where you have to like learn systems. And the older I get, like I just don't learn these systems as fast, but like I know a lot. So, hey, this is Ron Wayne saying, you could write a book about the leprechaun that haunts the famous North Star recording studio right back here. So that's my leprechaun back there. So yes, thankfully no haunting going on here in the North Star recording studio. So when it's kind of along that line, Ron. So when I was talking about this farm that we had out of town, the ginseng farm, and there was a family next to it that we would stop by, and they were farmers. They had a dairy farm, and I was like 8-9 years old like when we did this, right? So I don't really remember too much, but the grandma, her name was Sadie, and she gave me a pack of Post-it notes like when they first came out. I still have them in a drawer. Like I've never opened them up because they were like the original post. There was some kind of like design on them and something, and just it was a really kind gesture. Just a nice lady. This family nice, but she was psychic, and I remember we'd go out there for like Christmas and things like that, and it was a big thing because they're a farm family, and I don't think like a lot of people kind of visited them. But anyway, they had a house. The original farmhouse was to the right, and they had a smaller house, and they brought out a Polaroid picture that they took of the house. So we're talking like, I don't know, like 1977. And there was a person standing on the porch, like very, very clear in this Polaroid. And she said, oh, like that was like my brother. And like when they were building the house, like he fell and died. I was like, whoa. And she said, when I see people and if I see that they have a frame around them, that means death is imminent. So I'm like, whoa, all right. So Sadie, nice. She was a nice person, but I remember that photo, and the house is just kind of like creepy because it was probably like this 1880, 1870, like 2-story farmhouse that then they just like built this other place kind of next to it. But so yeah, it's kind of a yikes moment there. So I had an encounter with somebody a couple of years ago at the hospital. I won't get too much into it because like I don't, but they were going to do a blood draw, and the lady, like, younger than me by quite a bit, and she suddenly like it just had a really weird vibe instantly. And it was like in summer, and I'm just like easy going and stuff like that. And then like someone else came in and did the blood draw. And basically what happened was like this lady just had some premonition of me. And I actually had like 15 months of like really serious like health issues kind of after that. But she couldn't even like, she was almost like shaky and stuff like that. So, and she just apologized. And I'm like, yeah, it's okay. Like whatever. But I might have even said to her, like, you had a vision or something, didn't you? I'm not psychic. I don't know. But, it was really awkward, but I was like, whatever. I'm like, it's cool. Like, so but yeah, that Polaroid picture was really creepy. It was really a creepy thing. So, but I mean, I don't know, creepy. Like no one was going to hurt me. So like on the other side of this wall are I have the ashes of my godfather and his wife. So, and I had the Amish make a box so they could be side by side, and they're literally from where I'm sitting, they're 12 feet away. So they were great people, and they thought the world of me. So having that energy here in the house, I think is a good thing. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's where like coming down, for example, if it was like Kentucky, I mean, Gettysburg is obvious, like, but to go through like some of these battlefields or historic or some of the Native American locations, I think I'm really interested in that. I'm really I'm deep into history. So in my town, again, this town was developed, or 1820s, and there were a lot of Native Americans who were living in this area, in this community yet. And there was the Black Hawk War, which was about 25 miles away. But downtown, a lot of those buildings were interconnected by tunnels. And when I did the recording of School of Airs, the building was like, built in 1840. And the guy was telling me, yeah, downstairs, like there's a tunnel, but then it's blocked off. But if the blocks weren't there, like it goes to like this place across the road, and there's like another tunnel and all this stuff. And so one day I just said like, hey, when we're done recording, would you take me down there and just show me this? And he did. And I was like, wow. And he's like, yeah, sometime I'm kind of curious. Like I'd like to, knock the wall down and see if there's anything there. But, yeah, so let's get over to the chat here. So, Misty Mrs. Wayne said Gettysburg is on the list of places I want to visit. Yeah, me too. And I feel like I have so many friends that live near Gettysburg who, and of course for them, they've been there several times, and they're like, just come out and we'll show you everything, and you can hang out, and got a place to stay. And I just never took them up on that offer. And I'm like, and they're still there. And so I'm like, well, Jim or Vince, got to do that. So Andrew's saying 2 blood donations ago, I passed out. When I woke up, I saw a young nurse lady for a split second. I thought it was an angel. I was in heaven. Oh my goodness. Sounds like a Graham Wilson story. When I told my pastor this, he said, in the Bible, when angels appear, people are afraid. I replied, then she must be a demon. Oh my goodness. I watched, you guys might have seen this too, but it was the Fresh Kills landfill after 9/11, where they took the debris from the Twin Towers, and the workers out there would say, that they would hear people, that they would see apparitions. And one was a nurse carrying a tray of like sandwiches. Like there were multiple sightings of that. And, but I mean, that was really pretty thoroughly documented there for a while, of people saying, this is just crazy. So yeah, I don't know. Haven't had anything like that going on. So yeah, no real encounters with the paranormal. So, yeah, I am kind of, the older I get, the more I listen to like the Why Files with A.J. Gentile, which is an excellent podcast. I mean, it is unbelievable the amount of research that he and his crew put in the production quality, and it's stuff like multiverses and time travel, and just amazing. But things like past memories and multiverse, like simulations. Are we living in a simulation? And then even like, like Neil deGrasse Tyson stuff like that, you say, there's a good chance. And I think Stephen Hawking also kind of, toward the end of his career was saying, this could really be pretty legit. And it would explain things like the Mandela effect of, the cornucopia didn't exist for Fruit of the Loom, and the movie Shazam never happened and stuff like that. And so I was like, well, I don't know. It is, I think, like this whole thing of, and then they get into like UFOs and stuff like that. And I guess like I'm pretty open-minded maybe on that, because the thing is, like, if there were like alien crafts, right, the government would have to make a decision. Do you let people know about this or not? And, and I'm trying to think, like, if I'm in the room and there's this discussion going on, like, you'd have to come to the conclusion that you'd have to say no, because it would just erode everybody's thought of, like, it would largely kind of just destroy your religion. It would make people feel uneasy. And like, I just don't think you could ever. And now it's so weird because people, even if like you showed them things, they'd be like, well, that's just fabricated, right? Like, that's just done with like special effects and really. So I don't know, but it's kind of a curiosity of mine. So Ron's like, there's a hell of a lot of flying saucers here in Kentucky. So he's got like a rail gun in his backyard. So it's all magnetic. Can take down, like, after Independence Day, Ron totally changed his tune on aliens. He's like, you know what? They probably don't exist, but after watching this movie, I'm not taking a chance. So then he worked and invested, designed, and built a railgun capable of taking down a very large flying saucer. So, but what if they're here to help us? And Ron's takes them down. So I don't know. But so are you the oldest established homeowner now? I am not. I am the second. So next to me, my neighbor, her husband died 2 years ago in March, and he was like 96 when he died. And so she still lives there, but like her kids are no longer in the area, and she also has a home in England and some other places. So she's not here a lot. So I don't think that she'll keep that property. I could be wrong, but that would be my sense, is that she'll move. So we would be the second longest tenured people in the community, in our neighborhood, I should say. Like I said, my neighbors who are moving, like, they grew up here. So like, they're moving away, but like in my immediate neighborhood, yeah, it's us. And so that Mandela effect, Moonraker, right, with the braces at the end, right? So is that what we're talking? The lady, yeah, I remember too. I remember watching Moonraker, and I was convinced that she had braces, and like logically that made sense, because the big hulky guy that looked like he was from the Munsters, he smiled, and he had all of the metal teeth, and like that would have made perfect sense. Like, then she smiles and she has braces. But I was going through, I think, with Jim Mallard of the Mallard Report, and we're going through this maybe like 5-6 years ago on his show, different Mandela effects, and there are certain ones like the Fruit of a Loom cornucopia, and I don't know, Flintstones, and just some other things. And I'm like, yeah, it seems to, like, I was thinking, it's kind of like mass issues with remembering, but and maybe the way that media and subconscious and the more I was kind of reading about how advertising is done, right, that things get manipulated without us, kind of being. It was McClure's. Oh God, I referenced it in the Velocity of Information. The message is the medium, or he misspelled it. He put massage as the medium, and he just like published it that way. And that was like in the '60s, and you could kind of there was a lot of insight into how advertisers would get into the psyche of people. But like, it was interesting, but I was like, I don't, wasn't anything I was going to kind of dig deep into. But I do think there's a certain thing of like going places and feeling the imprint of the place. I believe that exists. So Ron is saying, hey, Ron still has the cornucopia underwear, the Fruit of the Loom. He's like, I'm wearing them right now. Whoa. He just sent me a text. He's like, I'll show them on screen. I'm like, Ron, we don't have to go that far to prove the point. So Andrew is saying Fruit of the Loom can be explained because it's a global brand and different subcontractors would make it and knockoffs. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think you can. I mean, most of the stuff can be rationally explained. So I think it's kind of interesting though, because there are a couple things, like I think it was that Shazam movie that I thought existed, and whoa. But just kind of these neat things. So I was on. You guys remember the Hawaii missile crisis? It was like 7 years ago when they were sending alerts out over the airwaves and in the digital billboards and stuff along the highway that missiles were inbound. Like, that was a fact. That wasn't Mandela. That was actually happened. And I was on Jim's show. So Jim Mallard is a paranormal investigator, and he took a little bit of a hiatus from it right now, but he had done hundreds of shows, had like Roger Stone on, and I had been on his show a few times, and we were talking about that after it happened, like maybe a week later, and I said, I just, there were so many things about that didn't hit face validity, right? Face validity is if you look at a thermometer, you're outside and it's snowing and the thermometer says 85 degrees, like something's wrong. The thermometer is not accurate, or like you're delusional, like one of those two things. So face validity just doesn't make sense. And I said, the thing is, like, states don't have their own missile detection systems, right? Like there would have to be a national, it would have to be issued. So they're saying like, oh, it was like this worker and then they loaded the wrong program. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't work that way, right? Like it wouldn't, like 50 states don't have their own detection and systems for this. I understand emergency broadcasts, yeah, but that just seems like that saying it's a preloaded alert like doesn't make sense. And then the person was reassigned, and then they within like a week they left, but then reporters went to their house where they were supposed to be living, and there was nobody there that met this description. So this person seemed like they just vanished. Like no one knew. Oh yeah, Pete. Damn it, the hell. Like, you grew up in Kentucky. Like, Ron would have had a good ass kicking with Pete. But we were going through this, and there's just a lot of things that didn't make sense with that. So I'd have to go back to the show, because it was a kind of, in real time, I was kind of writing this stuff down and then like hashing it over. But so, and it was people forget about this too. But is the Great Baboo or the Babaloo? So Florida had something like that happen. I think it was like a year later, similar to Hawaii. Not as large scale, but they had like a inbound missile alert that went out on EBS, Emergency Broadcast System, which a lot of people don't know. But again, it's a factual thing. And I'm like, how the hell, like, it's really weird. So that just had a strange feeling of, again, there were just many, I don't know if you guys remember that and when it hit the news and then how it was covered. But then, as I told Jim, I said, yeah, just call me, whatever government agency makes this mistake, and like bring me in a room, pizza, Pepsi, and I'll help you work your cover story. So like the whole thing with Hawaii, you could have, I think you needed to put a face to that. And then, you come out and you say, we were working on it. We weren't isolated from the national thing. And I had a whole cover story, like within 20 minutes, like put together that would have been, people have been, oh, okay, like I get it. And then just move on. But then the fact that that you're saying this guy got reassigned, well, who the hell gets reassigned for like that? Like you get fired for that. But then like he gets reassigned, but then he leaves, but then no one remembers him and they go to where he's supposed to. It's like, it's Hawaii. Like it's a goddamn island. So guy shows, then he's living in Kentucky for a while. He's making a railgun with some guy named Ron. Story really got out there, but then the railgun kind of added like legitimacy to it again. I was like, holy, now I kind of see where this is going. And it's like, whoa. So, wow. Oh my goodness. The audience appreciated that one. So, yeah, it was weird. Yeah, I thought that was very strange. So, I didn't like the cover. I didn't like the cover story for that. So, it seemed like they should have done a better job. So, yeah. I want to get this book. So, you guys know there's this guy, Abner, right? Aberney. Anyway, if I tell you the story, like, you'll know. Because DiCaprio played him in a movie. He was a real guy. And when he was like 18 years old, he pretended he was a pilot. So he learned how to forge checks. And anyway, he passed himself off as a Pan Am pilot. And so you'd have the uniform, you get to fly all over the world on the jump seat. And he would study like the planes and the terminology and stuff. But then he would always make sure, like if they asked him, like, what do you fly? He always would be like, something else. I don't fly this. So he pretended he was a doctor and he had like interns under him and he did all of these things. And the FBI caught up with him. And then instead of putting him in jail because he was so good at what he did, like with forgery, they basically said, we're going to hire you, but you're under arrest. You're like going to have to work 25 years with us, like busting criminals and stuff like that. And now he's got to be like in his 70s, but he's still like a vibrant presenter. And he goes and he tells these amazing stories of when he was impersonating, pilots and doctors and but anyway, like I'd love to read his story. And there's a book, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, an FBI negotiator. I have a lot of his presentations on downloaded podcast. So when I'm driving, like I'll listen to books, I'll also listen to like Chris Voss. And so he talks about like FBI negotiations, like during like bank robberies or like someone is Americans in Haiti and they're kidnapped and how you get people to negotiate with you and stuff like that. And I always found him to be fascinating. So I wanted to go and read his stuff because also like it just applies to real life, like everyday interactions you have with people. And so that's something too, is like this verbal judo, like going through this, I'm thinking, I want to read stuff that is going to maybe give me an extra tool in the toolbox for like real life things, like something I'll be thinking of. And I already have this like from verbal judo, because right away in the first chapter he was saying, you got to find out what people are really interested in, what they're motivated in, and then once you know that, kind of like build your approach off of that. So like if they're really into history, like kind of what makes them interested, and then in history specifically, and then if you can branch into that, or cars, or whatever it is. But I was kind of talking about, so I do consulting, and every year I retire from consulting and then I kind of re-enter consulting. And the older I get, it gets harder to learn these systems because it's not in it's other states I do this in, and I'm just like, man, I'm just getting too old for this. But part of it is like, I need to kind of I need to hone my listening and communication skills. Like, I think I've become, people hire me for a very specific skill set. And, like in educational, legal matters and stuff like that. So I kind of come in and like work in that capacity, but I'm not a very good listener and probably like good at reading people because I'm very focused on like what I'm doing. And I need to, I need to kind of acquire that again, or I need to like open that up a little bit. So it was kind of interesting because, look at this here. Ron's like, I love useless information. So Ron's like, he texted me once. He's like, hey, Doc, did you know there's 5,280 feet in a mile? I was like, yeah, I did. He's like, well, how the hell? I said, and then I said, Ron, did you know that Florida and Wisconsin both have 65,000 square miles? So Ron's like, I'm going to measure that. And he's like, I think it changes like with the coastal erosion in Florida. I'm like, well, it's kind of a moment in time, Ron. But that is a fact, actually. So guess who gets to tell useless information to? It's Misty Mrs. Wayne. So, but yeah, so, I'm doing some contracting now, and I was kind of like, yeah, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm not going to kind of carry this into next year, but they asked me, they said, would you consider like coming back? And I was like, that was not anywhere in my playbook. Like I don't see that happening. Maybe I will figure that out. But I don't know. So I have a hard time retiring. So I was actually in 2022, I think I didn't work. I worked at the university, but I didn't do anything else that year. And that was a little bit weird because when you get winter in Wisconsin, like November through like now, it is, or before daylight saving, it is dark early and it's cold and snowy. I'm not into like any of this stuff. So I was like, man, I get really stir crazy. So that's where like being busy, like I would really load up on work through the winter months because I'm like, when I wrote my books, I did a lot of the writing during the winter months because I just like, I want my summers free. I don't want to be doing stuff. So look at this. Andrew's saying Florida has 65,758 square miles. Wisconsin, 65,500. Yeah. So interesting. I actually knew that. You're saying, like, how the hell did you know that? So the reason I knew that, when I was teaching my classes in school administration, we talked about school districts, like the number of districts. And so Wisconsin has too many. We have 421. And I'm like, the state needs to consolidate. Back in the old days, this made sense. Rural schools, stuff like that. But, now it's modern. And so Florida has 82 districts, and they're all run by the counties. So, there's more efficiency in that from a business perspective, like, the business department management and ordering and buildings and grounds and things. You don't have redundancy that you have in 421 districts. So I don't know if Wisconsin should go to like 80 districts, but I certainly think it should be down to like 300 districts. There are districts here that have, like 8 K-12. One is an island, Washington Island. You have to go 2 miles on a boat to get out to the school. So every time I bring that up, though, like everyone's like, oh, then we lose like our hometown feel and being able to go to the sports, and the school is the heart of the community. I'm like, I get it, but maybe like the elementary schools, and then you feed into high school. But and it's the other part of this is I'm like, it's not my problem to solve. So I kind of get to that point too. I'm like, I only go down that road so far, and I'll be like, well, not my monkey, not my circus. So Yeah, I'm like, you can take that on. Whoa. So that was another reason, when I got out of the university, but because it was like kind of the politics of education. I just don't want to get on a position on anything anymore because it really doesn't pertain to how I do things. So, interesting stuff. But yeah, so I had this consulting that I'm doing now, which is some of the most challenging work I've had, and part of that is just that they're complex systems that I'm not used to, not states I don't kind of work in on a regular basis, and I don't think I learn it as quick as I used to. Like I think after I had pneumonia twice in 2024, that like I don't think I ever came back to the level I was before that, because I didn't bike after that. Like I was at the end of biking, and like today, like I feel fine and stuff like that. But I just think, maybe it's just you get older, or whatever. But I just kind of slow down and just don't process things. They just seem like more complex, and they are more complex. I mean, at the university, when I go in and they replace the chalkboards with smart boards, I'm like, I've never used these. So then I have to ask students, I'm like, show me what's going on here. I touch something and it goes away. And I'm like, so I would ask them, can you assign me to like one of the 3 rooms that still has a chalkboard or a whiteboard? So, but like I'm doing this, right? And StreamYard has gotten to be, I wouldn't say complicated. I think it's pretty intuitive. I love StreamYard, but Wisconsin, I think the Sunday, is that true? The hamburger was in Seymour, Wisconsin. The hamburger was invented. So, and somewhere in Kentucky, the alien railgun was invented. It's recent. No, actually, you have to go back to shortly after the movie Independence Day, but it's just recently kind of commissioned. So, I don't know. You could be right on that, Ron. I've always like heard the Seymour hamburger thing, which like a lot of people claim that, but interesting. So a little history fact: where I live in Portage, Wisconsin, the Fox River goes out to the Atlantic Ocean, and if you cross Portage right here, there's a mile of land between the Fox and Wisconsin. You can take the Wisconsin to the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. And the Native Americans would do that, and that was a trading, Lewis and Clark, right, would come through here. So so that was a well-known path. And there's this street called, it's Wyona Trail Road, but that dates back like 10,000 years. Yes, it's kind of interesting. Like, I have to drive this to get to the dealership, the car dealership. And you're like, also like, oh, like this road's been here 10,000 years. So, and it was finally repaved, but yeah, so just kind of crazy stuff. So, but it is officially 33 degrees out right now. So the storm, oh Christ. Now, so I have this thing that Copilot just came up on the screen for Windows 11. I don't know how to get it off of the screen. Will that do it? No. The hell is... Jeez. There, it left. It does that sometimes during meetings. And people don't know it from my end, but then it blocks out the whole screen for me. So I'm like, God. Yeah. So, yeah, so I have this offer on the table to kind of come, and it is, as far as like compensation wise, it's very nice. So I don't know if I want to, I wasn't thinking that at all. And I'm really not thinking of going down that path. It always seems good, like when you start off in it and then you're like, oh God, now I'm like stuck into this like term of a contract. And then I'm like, God, I don't have to do this anymore. That's the other thing. Like, I'm kind of like, Aaron will talk to me. Aaron Clary will be like, you don't have to do this stuff. I'm like, I know. So Google's, Ron is going to Google. I'm going to challenge you with Grok and then also with a rock. It's a rock that I ask. So rock, is this true? Google says, I've heard the Sundays thing too. I don't know where that is. The kindergarten thing, I think I heard that. Ron's like, did you know Madison was the capital of Wisconsin? I'm like, yes, that I knew. So Madison, by the way, Lake Mendota, in the last 5 years, they've discovered, I think, 12 or 13 canoes that they figure are 10,000 years old. Because that was the University of Wisconsin-Madison is several effigy mounds dating back, to that era. But they found these canoes. There was a diver who was also an archaeologist and just was out and not really intending to look for anything and found one. And they brought it out, and it was a big thing in the news here and everything. And then they found 12 or 13 more. And they figured that and they all had rocks in them. So they figured that the canoes would be purposely sunk at the end of the season. And then the Native Americans would leave from here and they go to St. Louis. And then we have Aztalan, which is, it's like a pyramid. It's probably an hour and a half from my house. We went there. It's really weird. And you go there, what the hell? There's this pyramid right here, Aztalan in Wisconsin. That thing, and that's supposed to be have very supernatural feel. And there was a princess who was buried, and it was very elaborate. And the Milwaukee County Museum excavated it, and then they took it for a display. And now I don't even think they display it because they they built a new museum and it's smaller. But I was like, that sucks. They should have left all of that intact. But anyway, so these canoes, they figure were intentionally sunk carefully down to the bottom to preserve them during winter. And then they would come back in spring from the St. Louis area. Because if you go back, 1,000 years or whatever, that St. Louis area was kind of the hub of trade for Native Americans. And so then they leave Wisconsin in winter and go down to Quebec, and then they would retrieve these canoes and use them. But this was the way to preserve them. I mean, that's the theory, right? And but it's amazing. I mean, it's modern times, right? And you're finding these canoes. I remember, when I think I told you guys this. I did a show. This is a really cool story. Really cool. So Ron's saying a 90-pound cheese wheel, more ghosts per square mile than any state. Really? So Madison is said to be haunted. And when I went to UW-Madison, so Bascom Hill is the original building. And then that was built on an Indian effigy mound. And then in front of that, I had the School of Education on the right. And then there's by the way, Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield was filmed at UW-Madison, but there was a large serpent mound, and that was destroyed. It's just, and there was a mound that was 2 stories tall that was there until I don't know, the 1920s, and it was removed. But there's still a lot of mounds there. But anyway, they were running some cable or something up on campus, and they found burials because so then by Old Main, there's, little markers. They would then reinter the remains. But here's a ghost story for you. The canoes thing is really interesting. So if you look up Madison, Wisconsin, and just type in ancient canoes, I mean, you'll find it. You'll see the videos. And I mean, for me, it's really close by. So, and so one of the kind of neat things about where I live, I I can bike or I can drive. There's the largest man effigy mound in the world is 10 miles from my house. So, and they've done documentaries. Like a lot of people have claimed it's very haunted. They go out there in their cars. I've been there several times, and they chopped the feet off of it when they put a road through in like 1910 of this ancient mound. So now where the road is, the feet are just painted white. So this thing is like the size of a football field of this, it's man mound. It's the only effigy in, I think North America, could be the world of man. It's like 10 miles from my house, the size of a football field, like 10,000 years old. So, so the neighboring community, Baraboo, has a lot of documentaries about like haunted Baraboo, because when that was the original plat for that city, the whole thing was mounds. So when they built it and leveled it off, like they had to destroy hundreds of mounds. There's like Mound Street, Mound Avenue, Mound Boulevard, and people are constantly reporting paranormal activities going on. So at Halloween, you do the Travel Channel, and they'll be like, the Baraboo Inn and haunted Baraboo and stuff like this, and I'm like, holy smokes, like it was just crazy. So yeah, I saw that on TV, crazy stuff. So Misty Mrs. Wayne is saying, I've seen a lot of stories on that. It's interesting. The equipment kept breaking down. Yeah. So it is really kind of neat to have all of that close by. And again, like UW-Madison is the most dense effigy mound campus in the world. But when I would be down there, so I'll kind of end with this story. It's really captivating. It really is. So I was a guest on a podcast maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And so this is a true account that I'm telling you. So I was doing my doctoral work at UW-Madison like 2008 to 2016. And I went down, first of all, the campus always had kind of a weird feel like at night, because a lot of my classes were at night. And then, God, I remember walking across, like, there's 50,000 students, but then you'd walk from like Old Main to the library to like back to the parking ramp. And there'd be like nobody out there. It would just be like snow blowing from the lake, like over the university. And I'd just be so cold, and it just felt like really eerie. And I was down there one time, I had a class on Halloween, and the fog was all saturated at the campus. And they have this science building that used to be the medical building. And there were a lot of stories, like a body shoot from the top after they would do the cadaver stuff, that then the bodies would drop down. And like it was 10 years ago, they were renovating, and they found formaldehyde filled jars with body parts and stuff like that. But anyway, so I had finished my doctoral dissertation, and then I should have a little music. Is there a little, okay, we'll do a little background here. It's kind of hard to set this. I don't know. Let me see if this one fits. Okay, hang with me here. Let me just see if they've got anything else. No, they don't. I guess I'll just give up on that then. Okay, so I had finished my dissertation defense, and the last thing you have to do is you have to make an appointment to go to Old Main, and you take your dissertation, and then there's all this paperwork that's signed off by your department. You have to take that, and then you have your dissertation on a thumb drive. This is back in 2016. And so Old Main was built, I don't know, like 1830. there's some weird things with that. Like there's a fire, but then there's a water tower on the top of it, and the tower collapsed and put the building out. But again, the building's on top of an effigy mound, and so people are like, this is a haunted. But so I went to Old Main. It was like 2 in the afternoon, 3, and I guess maybe like July. It was in summer, and I had to take this packet that was signed off by all of the people on my dissertation committee, and I had to take a thumb drive that had a PDF of my dissertation, because then they take it and they review it with you there, and then they publish it into a book, and it's kind of the last thing, and then you get your diploma and whatever. But so I went into this building, and they were doing renovation on it at the time, and it was Kat Ward, who was a paranormal investigator, and I was on her show. It's the only time I've told this story like publicly. But I went into the building, and so again, we're talking like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This is an amazing story, and it's sunny outside and everything. And I remember once I stepped foot and got it, a couple of yards in, it just hit me. Something was really off, because one, everything was filled with, the air was just like dense with dust. And I'm like, well, like grain explosions, like all this stuff, this is really dangerous. Like, what the hell's going on here? And there's no signage. Like, once you got in to the building, you totally were like just disoriented and lost. I had to get up to like 3rd floor and like meet with this lady, and it was really weird. But so I got into the building, and then I noticed like there were just so many things off. Like, you couldn't tell where you're going, and I'm like, this is really dangerous. What if there was like a fire and you had to get out because you couldn't? And the tools were like an old plane, right? And all like the manual plane. Just the stuff was just really strange, and I was disoriented, and I was moving around on the 1st floor, and like everything just seemed like very old. Like, I would say like 1880 type feel. And the building is kind of like that by nature, right? Because they've kept the historic. But so I couldn't find my way through the building, and I was disoriented. And then there was a guy, and came out from a hallway or a door or whatever, and he said, "Can I help you? Like, what are you looking?" And he looked like a train conductor. I got to do the train here. So he looked, like Kenan Thomas on Saturday Night Live. The dude looked just like him. So it really formal, but also like didn't seem like he fit the time at all. Like, this dude seemed like he was 100 years in the present, with me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm looking for whatever. And then like we were talking a little bit, and the whole thing was just off. And then he took me to an elevator and took me to the 3rd floor. And then he said, like, go down, and there's a door, and there's the top and bottom open, and that's the one you want to go to. And I started to walk down there and went back, and the dude was gone. I didn't hear the elevator move. There was nobody else there. And I found this room, and this lady's in there. And it is this thing where the door opens at the top and the bottom. Like, I don't know what the hell that used to be for, and then it's a small room. I go in there, and this all happened. Like, she takes a thumb drive, and she's like, "Oh, congratulations!" But then the whole thing there was really weird too. Like, she really didn't ask like about the research, and then I was like, "What time frame are you from? Like, where am I?" And so she's going through, and she does have a computer, and she loads the stuff up, but the whole thing just seemed really off. So anyway, I get done, and I sign whatever I have to do, and I leave, and I end up like on a fire escape on the other side of the building, and I have to like work my way down. This happened, and then it's dusk, and I get back to my car. But here's the thing. I get back to my car in the parking ramp, right? And I'm like, what in the hell? I think it's Christ, like 7 at night. And from the parking ramp to this building is a 10-minute walk. And like in the building, that could have been more than an hour. So I come out and I was like, whoa. Got to my car and I left. But here's the thing. I have the punch ticket when I came into the ramp and when I left. And I had to keep the punch ticket because I needed it for my taxes, because my mileage to the university and the date and all of that had to be documented, tax deduction. And I still have the ticket, time in 2 o'clock, time out 7 o'clock, 5 hours. There's no way more than an hour passed. I did nothing. I didn't stop it was a 10, at worst, it was a 15-minute walk in perfect weather. And this whole process of meeting with this person, 30 minutes. So I was talking to Kat about that, and I'm like, and so, but I was researching this a little bit. You don't want to come off as crazy, especially after they give you your doctoral dissertation. So, and then I was researching this, and there were other people over the years had accounts of time slips on Bascom Hill. And they attribute it to this psychic energy because, again, of this serpent mound in this area, or these this was ancient, and then this thing's built on this mound. And then I was talking to Kat, and she said, if they're renovating it, they're kind of disturbing things. And I said, it was, I could have written it off if it wasn't for the parking garage receipt. And to this day, it is one of the most bizarre. You talk about like a Mandela. I have no way to explain that. There's no logical explanation for that passage of time. And then also coming out on a fire escape, and like I had to like climb down this thing. I mean, it wouldn't have been that way, right? This is a busy 50,000 people campus, and like there were just so many things that didn't make sense, and I just kind of wrote them off until the 2 o'clock, 7 o'clock. And I think Kat asked me, like, she goes, did you ever go back? I'm like, well, yeah, I think so, but I never had like a repeat experience of that. It doesn't, but I'm like, that day, that moment, everything. And it was, I just vividly remember the first like 3 yards into the building. I was like, something's wrong. And again, any of us would know this, like today in OSHA and all of this stuff, that the grain dust, we had a mill that like there was a grain explosion. And I remember then after that, they had these signs up like, of if you see grain dust or whatever, like exit the building. And this thing of, I was trained as a firefighter back, I don't know, here, I'll show you back at this time. So there I am, there's Doc, right? So I don't know, what was it? 93. So, all of my training in the Spidey sense, I was just like, oh, this is super dangerous. And then the fact nothing was marked, and then suddenly anything that was modern was just gone. And then this interaction with this guy, he was assuring, I didn't feel any nerves, but he was completely out of place. I remember it was a hot day, and I remember looking at him like, God, it was like a train conductor, like a heavy wool jacket. And again, looked like Keenan Thomas. So it's one of those things. Whoa. And again, so Kat said he was there to help you to get through this thing and to navigate while this whole building was going through this weird energy stuff. And then, and I remember the fire escape thing, like that was because obviously like that wasn't the way out of the building, and I think I kind of got dirty from that because it's kind of like rusty and stuff like that. I'm working my way like down this thing, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, how am I even out here? Like, how is this? How? Like, it was just a door that I opened, and then I was out there, and the whole thing was just really, obviously, really strange. So I was just, Jesus, what the hell's going on? I never felt like scared. I never had my footing the whole time. And then I remember walking back to the car, and I was like, geez, like just couldn't get over, like it was late and this just trying to process like everything that had happened. But that's one of those weird moments, like it's a Twilight Zone where you have the receipt. Otherwise you could say, oh, it's just whatever and things like that. But I'm like, no, actually, I still have it. So let's go to the chat here. Ron is saying it's definitely a time slip. Miss Wayne is like, wow. So Ron is saying, I experienced that when I was a senior in high school. I'll tell you about it sometime. If I come down, it really leaves you puzzled and almost angry that you can't unravel the logic of the situation. Well, actually, I'm glad you shared that. I was very protected. I didn't want to share that because it sounds really crazy. And so initially when I got out of there, and then I did share it on Cat Show because it's like, why not? And it's not like I have anything, I didn't write a book about it. I have nothing to gain by this, but yeah, like that was super freaky. And like, I just kind of blocked it. But then like I did some research, right? Then I dug in and I was like, well, there's all of these accounts of these things happening in this area, like since the founding of and then before the Civil War, the Confederate veterans that were captured were a block away from that at Camp Randall. So, and like half of them died from dysentery and they weren't used to the cold. And then, so they were burying them. And so like you have in the military, Camp Randall was a Union military training facility during the Civil War. But then again, the Confederate soldiers were brought up. And so you have this whole intermixing of Native American and then like this really strong Civil War energy that's right there. Very strange. Like, so if you ever watch like the Wisconsin Badgers Camp Randall, like the football field was the military training site. So then like right next to it, there's like one prison barracks that's preserved. It's under a metal shed. And then there's like a monument but literally like if you're in the stadium, like that was that's why they call it Camp Randall's military camp. And it's it training Union soldiers. So like, wow, you'd be there and oh man, it was just crazy. So, but yeah, I don't know. It was a crazy thing. So yeah, Ron, I'm interested. So sometime I would love to hear that. I'm very eager. But yeah, that was a wild experience. I don't remember driving home from that either. Like everything just kind of like was surreal for a while. So yeah, it was, if people talk, if there is this thing of a time slip or whatever, you're in constant wonder of what happened. Yeah. And I'm glad I did talk. Kat interviewed me and, we probably spent 90 minutes on her show and it was maybe like 2 years after it. So it was still kind of fresh, as far as the details. I'm sure I had more details back then, but I just kind of like blanked it out and just didn't acknowledge it for a while. And then like, I rarely think about it, but again, it's tax time. We just got our taxes done. And then I have my big, area in the other room where I keep all of the taxes for the different years. I'm like, if I just pull out like that, 2016 tax packet, I'm going to have that receipt is right there. And, man, it was freaky. It was, but again, it's amazing there are people who've just written books about the hauntings and the paranormal, and especially like the Native American energy with the mounds and the destruction of the mounds and the burial sites and the desecration and all of that stuff. And I'm like, well, again, I that's where this whole thing of multiverse and imprints of energy and things, I don't kind of dwell on that, but as I kind of think about that, I'm like, I think there's so much out there we just don't understand. And again, because it was a firsthand experience, it was something I'll never, forget, although it's kind of weird because like I largely just block it out. Again, not that it was this horrible thing, but we kind of just went down this path tonight and I was like, holy smokes, man. But yeah, like if somebody showed me, because then I think Kat was saying, well, did you go back to the university and try to like look through the hallways and see if there's like pictures of people up? And then you could be like, yeah, that was a person I interacted with. Like they attended here in 1884 or something. But I was like, no, I didn't. I wasn't like, I didn't really have any desire to try to figure that out. I think where Kat kind of went with it is she said it probably wasn't even somebody necessarily from there. It was probably this multidimensional traveler who comes to that to navigate you through as all this other stuff is happening with and you kind of hear these things, right? I remember growing up and being a kid and you'd hear these ghost stories of like a haunted house and some people they'd move the furniture, like they'd live there, and then during the night they'd hear bumping around because the ghost was used to where the furniture was, and now they're going around and they're hitting things. But yeah, man, it was freaky. When I was at Ron says I don't have anything tangible like a ticket, but two other people were with me. We all experienced it together. Each of us still have the same account. Yeah, so inter-rater reliability is incredible. When I worked so I talked about Fort Winnebago. I worked as a volunteer guide. I never took $1 from Fort Winnebago, and I worked as a volunteer guide. I love the history when we first got down here, so I think I did that for like 3 to 4 years. And I did all the greenskeeping, which was a lot of work. I got volunteered, and my dad and I rebuilt a split rail fence. We actually did all of the posts for that and rebuilt. And then I would work on the one building that was built in 1884. It's kind of weird because these historical buildings, you're supposed to get all these permits, but really if a shutter is falling off or something, like you just have to fix it, right? Because there isn't really a budget to do that. And I had a number of paranormal experiences. One, I pulled up and was opening up the grounds for the day as the only one there, and the alarm was going off on my car, which never happened ever. Every time I would walk up to the building, and the lights are flashing and the alarm, and I'd walk, and before I get back to the car, it would stop, and then I'd walk back, and I'd get close, and it would start again, and I was like, what the hell's going on here? And then, I think I got inside the building, and I was like, well, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm the good guy. I'm the one rebuilding the fence here. I'm taking care of the property. I'm telling the story correctly. So but I took pictures, and I had some strange things show, and it's weird because I can't find the pictures. There was one that looked like someone was standing in the doorway, but I had a lot of orb pictures, a ton of orb pictures. So I never had that anywhere else. And I had some of them, but I can't find all of the files, which is weird because I don't know why I don't have them, because they were on my camera and stuff like that too. And I think I don't want to get too down the road on this, but so it was the Daughters of the American Revolution owned the site, and I want to say they kind of mentioned to me, like, don't don't say the place is haunted, because obviously school kids come there and stuff like that, and but I had a lot of weird experience, and this was the surgeon's quarters. It's still there today, and then you would have next to it was the hospital where you had numerous deaths, and it was mostly because of diseases, not because of battles. Was right next to it, and then there were a lot of interesting things because I did a ton of research. I was fascinated, and they were putting in new utilities, and they found the plank military road that went in front of the building. Like it had kind of been lost. Like I had all the old maps and stuff like that, and it was kind of interesting. Jefferson Davis, like I could read his notes. He was stationed at the fort, so I had my special gloves on and reading through his entries. And some of the furniture he made was in this building and signed by him. But yeah, it was just, man, I had a lot of weird things. And there were these collections of like arrowheads and Native American artifacts that people had just donated, like 100 years ago. So they were like on display inside of the building. So yeah, building's 200 years old, and when it was constructed, it was constructed in the midst of a Native American settlement. There were very few Europeans, but yeah, I remember that one time when the car, I've never had that happen in my entire life with any vehicle, and I was like, so what's the deal here? Because, I'm helping you out, and this is all volunteer, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job. So if you've got a problem, manifest yourself. Let's duke it out. But I never felt like freaked out because, again, I'm like, hey, I'm taking care of the place. I'm telling the story accurately. I'm donating all of my time and my talents to like really make it look good. And so I'm like, who's pissed off about that? Jefferson Davis got a bone to pick about that. So, man, that was weird though. Usually it would always be like when you'd open up the building and you'd do the walkthrough. And I remember talking to a lady. So I guess Ron said, it's interesting how accepting most people are to talking about this stuff. There are some who still see it as a taboo, but we have come a long way in the last 20. Yeah. Especially like you see on TV, shows, and they'll be like underneath, people are like, it's a folklorist, and like the ghosts. Some of that is like for drama, but actually to have these, like we have a travel channel, and like I just call it the ghost channel or paranormal channel. So that's a good mentality to have. Yeah, I was like, what's the deal here? So Doc's your friend, right? Doc's been excellent to the property, excellent to you, excellent to the story. So that was weird. When I first got out of when I first started my career, I worked in a hospital, a speech language pathologist, which was like 1995, and there was a patient who was like in her 80s, and she had a stroke. So like I was helping with her rehab, and her daughter was the curator of a museum in New Mexico, and it was like an Aztec museum, and so she was up and would visit often, and anyway, we were talking a little bit, and I asked her, I said, is there ever anything like weird that happens? And she like just stopped, and she said, yeah, like kind of all the time things, are moved, or things, you hear sounds and voices. And she was like, it's like she had waited her entire life for somebody to ask her that question. And I was like, oh, really? And she said, oh, yeah. Like, and there are people who come here, and there's also like, they perceive it, and there are the natives of the area who feel like this shouldn't be on display. It should be back in the Indian heritage centers, however they want to display it. But she said it is a completely different place at night. And she's like, it's terrifying. So may as well stay cool and try to reason with them. Yeah. So, yeah, because I told that story to somebody, the surgeon's quarters story, and they said, well, they're trying to get your attention. I'm like, yeah, well, okay, I guess. But then, like, what was the message? Or was it like Morse code of the blinking of like, hey, thanks, good job on the fence. Thank you for fixing the well. So I was like, oh, damn it. I don't know Morse code. I don't know. I guess it was the Pigpen code during that time. It was actually, I looked some of that up. Like, they used to do these coded messages. I think it's called the Pigpen code. But maybe they were like sending it to me in code, and they were like, hey, hell of a job. Thanks, buddy. And I'm like, I'm not, I don't, flashing lights, I don't quite get it here in the horn. But yeah, it was, yeah, again, it was like just frustrating, because maybe it happened like 3 times. Like, I walked up and walked back, and it was like the break of dawn, and I'm up there, I'm like, what in the hell is, it was like Chris Farley, what in the hell is that all about? And I just was like, and then it didn't deter me from going into the building. So on the second floor was closed off. I could go up there, but it was like closed off to the public. And then they also had these toys, which were still up there, and they're like baby rattles, and bassinets, which were from like 1820. And I remember when I started there, like don't go up there, and all of a sudden, and the other part was like these rattles had rice in them, and that's how they made them. But then like it becomes ricin, like a toxin, and if you like shake it, you get neurotoxic, you could kill yourself. I was like, that's good to know. We should put that as number 1 on the tour guide training. Don't go up to the second floor and stay away. But the stuff was there. But the second floor was completely freaky, because I was like, just it looked like that hadn't been touched. It wasn't for the public. But did some cool things though. My wife baked gingerbread cookies, and the fort, or the building, had tours around Christmas, and it was done up in kind of like a Christmas theme of 1825. And they had the oven, because there were like rats in the building. Like, you couldn't put food out. But she baked gingerbread cookies, and we had them in a plastic container, steel plastic container. And then when people did the tour, they would get there, and then I would open up the oven, and then I'd give them each a cookie as a gingerbread, which I thought was really cool. It's kind of a nice touch. I was a great guide, by the way. I had a lot of fun doing the tours, and had a lot of energy with it, and it was absolutely amazing. So yeah, that was just a fabulous time. And then when I started there too, the site was pretty neglected. So it's probably on like 2 acres. So when I would mow and like do tree trimming and all of this stuff, like, I mean, I put in hundreds of hours, and then especially like rebuilding the fence and rebuilding the well. Holy Lord, that was a lot of work. And but then like it started to come around, and then you could tell as you pulled up, it wasn't like some old site. It was like just some well manicured. It just looked completely different, especially once we got the fence back up. But yeah, that was really cool. I haven't been back. It's kind of a weird thing. Like you come down to a city, you move here, and it's like, oh, like here's a 200-year-old fort building, and here's like the Indian Agency house, and there's like books about it and how the natives would come here and the government would trade them sugar for, you know, their property, or like pelts for their animal pelts, or like for lumber and stuff like that. Like all this stuff like that happened right here. And literally like a mile from my house. And then I worked in a building when I first moved here, which is 2 blocks over from my house. And then in back of that building, maybe like another 3,000 feet would be the Indian Agency house. And there was a canal there, Fox River, and then the fort would have been on the other side. And that building I worked at, a lot of people claim that there were paranormal. It was built like in the 60s, but that there was heavy paranormal activity in the building, especially at night. And there were people who absolutely wouldn't be in there at night. I never had anything happen, but like people, and if you kind of look at like where it was situated, it kind of made sense. But holy smokes. All right, Misty Miscellaneous going to bed. I'm going to go to bed too. So, but this was good. I'll listen to it, and then the audio, and there'll be all these voices. I'll be like, holy smokes. So I'm going to do... And one more time. And then Ron Wynn's like, hey, I got my railgun ready to go. I'm just going to check out the connections. Whoa. Wow, just took down the International Space Station with that one. So, yikes. Ron, to be continued. So, yeah, this is good. Actually, I'm looking forward to listening to this one. So, everybody, have a good night. Let me do an outro here. Let me kind of find my... StreamYard would just be embarrassed if they saw me try to navigate this, because they do a really good job with this interface. They're like, Doc, yeah, you got to help us out. Okay, this is Ron Wayne when he saw a ghost in Kentucky. This was a few years ago. So, Ron Wayne when he saw a ghost in Kentucky. All right, thanks, everybody.
Holy shit, a ghost. Do you mind moving out of the way? You're blocking the TV.
Oh, shit. Sorry, man.
It's okay. Thank you.